Okay, so let's get to it. It's the main event. Yokozuna, Bret Hart. Before we talk about the match, let's talk about what Bret wrote in his book. He says that when he first got to Vegas with his parents, Vince wanted to meet with him. So he goes and sits down with Vince, and Vince says, "This is what I want to do. I want you to drop the belt to Yoko tomorrow." This was not what I had expected. I sat there dumbstruck as he went on to explain how Fuji would screw me, throwing salt in my face, blinding me. And after Yoko was handed the belt, Hogan would rush to my aid, and in some kind of roundabout way, would end up winning the belt from Yoko right then and there. Like I was handing Vince my sword, I told him I appreciated everything he did for me, and I'd do whatever he wanted. Vince said, "Don't get bitter. I still have big plans for you." Sound bites flashed through my mind of Vince assuring me that I was the long-term champion, and not to worry about Hogan, who still hadn't even spoken to me yet. As I stood up to leave, I asked, "Did you take the belt from me because I didn't do a good enough job?" "Of course not. I'm just going in a different direction. I'm still onwards and upwards for you. Nothing much is going to change for you." I was still totally crushed. As I lay in bed that night, the more I thought about what Vince had in his mind for Hogan, the more I felt that it would completely backfire on both of them. The hokey finish would stink, and maybe not immediately, but in the weeks to come, my fans, who were the biggest contingent of Vince's paying audience at that time, would gag on it. There was something different about my fans. They really believed in me as a person. By the time I got to the dressing room the following afternoon, word that I was losing the title had leaked out to the boys. Most of them were quiet, and some were angry. The Nasty Boys, Shawn, Taker, and several others expressed their utter disappointment. Knowing I was losing the belt didn't stop me from planning on having a great match. I went over everything with Yoko and designed the match so that all the best moves were left for the final minute. Hogan arrived with his entourage, his wife, his manager, Beefcake, and Jimmy Hart. Clearly, he'd been in the know all along, probably from the first day he came back. Now he was suddenly acting like my long-lost pal and wearing a big smile that rightfully belonged to me. During our match, it was hot and dry in the desert, but a cool breeze made it impossible to work up a healthy sweat. An exhausted Yoko stampeded like a runaway elephant, short-charging on my comeback and editing out all of my best spots. I was furious that he would take it upon himself to go home on his own. That's how I came to find myself crouched low, desperately hanging on Yoko's two massive calves in the sharpshooter, fighting with every ounce of strength not to let go. Fuji was caught off guard by the sudden ending, and it took him forever to find, unwrap, and throw a packet of what was actually baby powder into my eyes, supposedly blinding me. I fell back as Yoko hooked my leg and Hebner counted 1, 2, 3. Right on cue, Hogan hit the ring protesting the injustice that had been done to me, and Earl put on that classic expression of utter stupidity that all pro wrestling refs wear when convenient. As I feigned blindness, Hogan helped me out of the ring. Fuji stayed in the ring, absurdly challenging Hogan to a title match with Yoko right then and there. Yoko was still teetering from exhaustion and looking for a second win that wasn't there. Hogan blinked in astonishment at his sudden good fortune. As scripted, with my face buried in the crook of my arm, I waved to him to avenge my loss. "Go get him, Hulk." I was really thinking, go ahead, Hogan, take from me what I worked so hard to get. We'll just see how long you last. Hogan was champion again without even having a match, and before I'd even made it backstage. He simply ducked the powder that Fuji threw in his face, clotheslined Fuji, and dropped his big leg on Yoko. And I could hear the 1, 2, 3 and the roar of the crowd and Hogan's music thumping. I couldn't help but stare at the TV monitor, watching Hogan work the crowd, the same old posing routine, a hand behind the ear, shaking the world title belt in the air as if to say it belonged to him all along. A few minutes later, he came up to me, excited and happy, and said, "Thank you, brother. I won't forget it. I'll be happy to return the favor." I looked my old friend in the eye and said, "I'm going to remember that, Terry." As for Yoko, I was always a little pissed off at him for going home on me and not letting me show Vince, Hogan, and everyone else that we could tear the house down without their bullshit finish. Even so, it was the best match that Yoko ever had. Meltzer would rate it 3 stars. It goes 8 minutes and 55 seconds. What did you think of the match? And do you remember that sequence of events pretty much the way Bret Hart laid out in his book?
Yeah, pretty much. That's the sequence of events in the order that they happened. I thought that the match was good. The the idea of Hulk winning the title probably came up a few weeks before WrestleMania.
Let me give you this. Hulk Hogan wrote in his book, it would be another chance for Vince to see if he could move beyond Hulkamania, to see if his company could go on without me, just like it had gone on without all the other stars who left over the years. If they would have gotten behind me and pushed Hulkamania as hard as ever, we may have gotten the company's momentum back. Instead, Vince chose to go a different way. He didn't have anything as exciting as Hulkamania, so everything gradually started to come crashing down. Then the federal government started to really put pressure on Vince. They tore the guts out of his business, and he had a hard time regrouping. So it all just hit bottom. The industry, the wrestlers, fan interest, the numbers, and my future with the WWF. By mutual agreement, I was gone for almost a year. During that time, I filmed Mr. Nanny, and I also started wrestling again in Japan, where the fans still love me regardless of the steroid mess. It was a refreshing change, brother. I didn't have to cut my hand to my ear to get the crowd behind me. I didn't have to do the big boot in the face and the leg drop to get a big cheer. I could just go out to the ring and wrestle. It was fun. But back in the U.S., the wrestling business was just getting worse. Finally, it seemed like Vince McMahon was willing to put me back in the spotlight, if only for a little while. I was going to wrestle at WrestleMania IX in Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. Not in the main event, but in a tag team match. The main event would pit Yokozuna, a 700-pound challenger, against the champion, Bret Hart. Yokozuna was slated to win the match and take the heavyweight belt. Here's where we get cooking. But then when I got to the building, I told Vince, look, man, we both know I'm done here. The moment has passed. The love affair is over. But I've got an idea that will allow me to pass the torch. And what's that, Vince said. After my tag match is over, when Bret Hart gets beat by Yokozuna, how about if I come out to protest the way Bret lost? Yokozuna's manager, Mr. Fuji, can challenge me to get in the ring against Yokozuna, and boom, I can beat Yokozuna to win the title. Then I go to the next pay-per-view and drop the belt right back to Yokozuna, and I'm out of here. That was the deal. Vince agreed to it, and I thought, boy, I just stole me a couple more big paydays. And I didn't mind doing a job for Yokozuna, because I love the guy to death. It was all set. So now a minute ago, you said this was the case before. Hogan's taking credit as it being his idea when he's in Vegas.
Yeah, and that would be wrong. And I'll tell you, I'll explain to you again the narrative and why it's wrong. This is what I wanted you to remind me about. We'll talk about pay-per-view and all of that right now. So, as I said, a few weeks before, Vince, and I assume it was after a conversation with Hulk, Vince feels is going to give added value to the European tour to have Hulk go over there with the championship. I came up with this idea and this thing to switch the title at WrestleMania, to do the thing with Bret, everything that was laid out by Bret. Behind the scenes even more, DirecTV was becoming a player in the pay-per-view game. And cable companies on demand pay where you could order your pay-per-view channels with your remote control was becoming a big thing. You didn't have to call the cable company to order pay-per-view. And the Grateful Dead, I believe, were the first people to ever do this. They had a huge concert on pay-per-view, a live concert with the Grateful Dead. Got tremendous response. The cable companies came back a week later and did an encore presentation of the Grateful Dead concert. And because of word of mouth and how great this concert was, and if you missed it live, here's your second chance to see the Grateful Dead. We're going to show an encore presentation all weekend long on DirecTV. Because if you would look at those pay-per-view channels, you would see just emptiness, and they would be running the same movie on 10 different channels. So the airtime was essentially free. And I posed the question to Vince when he's pitching this idea. I said, hey, the Grateful Dead did this deal. I explained the whole encore presentation. I said, what if I love the idea of switching the title to Hulk, because on Monday we now have an opportunity to promote Monday night on Raw, an encore presentation. If you missed WrestleMania, because prior to this, you had the live opportunity to see the pay-per-view, and that was it. The pay-per-view's on at 4 o'clock. The pay-per-view, whatever time it was on one time, and maybe you got a repeat for the West Coast. But that was it. They didn't have repeats. And so we are promoting all the way up into this, Bret Hart versus Yokozuna, Hulk Hogan, the Mega Power, or Beefcake and them against Money Inc. But now on Monday, we have an opportunity to talk about, holy shit, what a great event. New world champion, Hulk Hogan. And people are going, what? Because they didn't know Hulk was even competing for the WWF Championship. So now you have a story to tell on Monday. You have a second chance to sell pay-per-view with an event that you couldn't promote before that. And we pitched it to some of the promotion and marketing people who all shit on it. But Vince liked it. And he said, well, let's try it. So it was kind of a twofold deal. It was one, he wanted to get the title on Hogan for in his head to add value to the European tour. And two, let's try this encore presentation because it's a unique approach. You talk about what you're going to expect in your promotion for an event. Now, after the event, you can promote, holy shit, what you missed. So for those of you that didn't buy the pay-per-view event, this weekend, all weekend long, you're going to have another opportunity to see it and see Hulk Hogan become the WWF champion. So, yes, we knew in advance. And we had already put the wheels in motion to have the encore the next weekend and had all those spots. And we would have everything ready for Monday to promote that. It was not organic. It did not happen that weekend.
Meltzer even wrote as much, saying on television Monday night they announced that Yokozuna was filing a protest and that a ruling would be made on television as to the future of the title. The ads for the replay of Mania talk about seeing the title change hands twice in the same night at the greatest WrestleMania ever. So it's clearly a marketing ploy from the beginning. I'm curious about something that you're not going to want to give me a straight answer on, so just talk around it. Did Hogan make more money than anybody on the card that night?
I have no idea.
Freestyle a guess.
I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't doing payoffs then, so I really don't know.
Hogan didn't work the tapings the next week, and in fact only worked 3 dates in May in tag matches against Money Inc. He did work a Japanese date and spent some time filming the Thunder in Paradise pilot. The plan was for him to come back in June and work 3 days a week, with Duggan taking his spot when he was off. Bruce, in hindsight, was the decision to have Hogan win the belt a knee-jerk reaction, or is it a mistake, I guess is what I'm asking, considering that he's got all these other irons in the fire with Mr. Nanny and Thunder in Paradise and wants a limited schedule and top money, and does this not seem a little bit unworkable?
Well, I do think in hindsight that it was a knee-jerk reaction. I also think in hindsight that it would have been better to stay the course. I wouldn't have had a problem dropping the title to Yoko and leaving it on Yoko for a while. However, the decision was always, we knew Hogan was going to go make movies. We knew Hogan was going to go do his TV show. So the decision to put the title on him was never long-term anyway. It was a short-term fix. It was a short-term idea for a short-term return. That was it. It was a shot in the arm. Hindsight being 20/20, was it the best decision? Probably not.
A week later, Meltzer writes that WrestleMania did a 2.1 buy rate, which would be about 430,000 buys, or roughly a $5.8 million gross for Titan. He also says this would be the lowest of any previous WrestleMania, but that was expected. And the amount of the drop between this year and the previous year was less than had been the case in the previous years. So 5 to 6 was a big dip, 6 to 7 was a big dip, 7 to 8, another dip. So the dip from 8 to 9 was not as bad. So in a weird way, it's a good sign that we're not losing as much as we've been losing, but we're still losing. Meltzer writes, one estimate is that Hogan's appearance at this show was worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.2 million based on pay-per-view. It's harder to determine the live gate. But did you ever get numbers like that when we added this guy, this is the effect it made to the pay-per-view buys?
No, not really, no. That's hard to tell. I mean, that's all speculative.
It comes out after the fact that a lot of casino buys apparently were not actually claimed. So people were given comps to move from their cheaper seats into the more expensive sections. So while they claimed to sell out, it wasn't actually a sellout, but they probably still got paid from the casino. So it wound up being a really big swing for Titan. So the idea here again is Caesars and the casinos may have actually paid for the tickets. So whether or not they're all actually there or used or sat in doesn't matter as much because they made their money. So it does matter when you watch the match and you see people just kind of waving at the camera and sitting on their hands. A lot of them aren't wrestling fans, but the tickets were paid for and they did really, really well compared to WrestleMania 8. And by comparison, at the Hoosier Dome, there's 62,000 people there. So the money's not that different, but the money is a lot better from a net profit standpoint. So while the gross may be similar, the net is a lot more here, if that makes sense. Do you remember this being perceived as being a financial success after the show?
It was not considered a failure. So it was decent money and it was better business than we had been doing. So yeah, they were happy with it.
Hindsight is always 20/20, but you agree that Hogan maybe wasn't what was best for business long term, but he was what was best for business short term?
Yes.
If you had to do it over again today, would you do it the same way, or would you keep it with Yoko?
No, I probably would have kept it with Yoko.
That would have been the first WrestleMania where a heel finishes the show as champion. That would have been okay for you, but maybe not Vince, right?
Oh, it always would have been. Yes, it definitely. Vince wouldn't have liked that at all. He would have fought that tooth and nail.
Many believe this to be the worst WrestleMania of all time. What say you?
Let me think about that one. Either 8 or 9. So yeah, it could be up there. Definitely. It may be the worst.
Well, want to know what happened when Bret confronted Hogan about the switch? Find out after these words.
From RGT4Law.com.
Have you or a loved one been affected by mesothelioma? You may not have to file a lawsuit to get a recovery. Go to RGT4Law.com and fill out the easy form for more information. Robert Taylor, RG Taylor II, PC and Associates, Houston, Texas.
Okay, so before we get to how Bret confronted Hogan, I had a minute during the Rob Taylor commercial there to pull it in my Google machine, and I'm going to call bullshit on something, Bruce. Just a little while ago, you were dying on the hill that we needed to have Hogan as a part of this European tour, and I thought you were referencing the summer tour, which I knew he wasn't on. He was gone by then. But you maintained to know there was one in April, which made sense because they always go to Europe right after WrestleMania. Well, I pulled the results up. Let's run through some. April 8th in Paris, France, Yokozuna works with Jim Duggan. The next day in Bournemouth, England, on April 9th, Yokozuna works with Jim Duggan. The next day in somewhere in England, April 10th, Yokozuna works with Jim Duggan. The next day in Sheffield, Yokozuna, you want to guess who he worked with? Jim Duggan. And then we're back to Scotland. You want to guess who Yokozuna worked with?
Who did Hogan work with?
He's not on any of the fucking shows.
Sure he is. He's got to be. In May?
No, in April. He's not on any of them.
Yeah, but in May he was.
Okay, well, you were saying that it was right after WrestleMania, so I threw it in my Google machine.
Well, May is after WrestleMania.
Okay, so you're maintaining...
Between WrestleMania and King of the Ring.
Let's see. Memphis, Manhattan Center, Louisville, Los Angeles, San Francisco. We're not to Europe yet. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Nova Scotia, Ontario. Yeah, they didn't go to Europe in May.
Yeah, they did. They went to Europe between WrestleMania and King of the Ring.
I agree. They did it.
Behind it.
They did it the next week in April.
That was Hogan that did it.
Hogan's not
on the card.
No, he's not.
Well, that was the reason it was done. Go back. Do you have my books there? Go back and look through my books.
I'm telling you, he's not on them.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you the reason it was done, and that was the idea behind it.
He worked a house.
It was Hogan's farewell tour overseas.
But he never did it, is what I'm saying. Are you calling bullshit on this?
Dude, I don't know. I don't have the books in front of me.
He worked a show in Japan on May 3rd, and we kind of alluded to that a little earlier. He worked in the Manhattan Center in May. He did some interview segments.
Where did Hogan work in April and May? You tell me he didn't work?
No, I'm not saying he didn't work.
If you tell me that he didn't work overseas, I'm probably going to say that your information online may be incorrect. That's what I'm telling you. Do you have my books there?
I don't. Did you leave 94 here?
I don't know.
I mean 93 here?
I think so.
I'm telling you, I'm looking at it, and the homie is not on the fucking show. So earlier you argued...
You're looking at what is reported online by someone, right? Or are you looking at WWE's?
I'm looking at the history of WWE.com, and it goes through specifically day by day. It's worth mentioning that this is the same batch of information that we have consistently used here on the show. And you're going to say...
That's what you consistently use.
Well, yeah, I'm the only one who does any fucking research on this show.
Not always correct.
Well, I mean, what can you say to this? I feel like you've just been busted.
How have I been busted?
Well, because you just are.
Because, no, I just gave you the reason of why the title was given to Hogan. That's it. You're trying to be a Bob Costas, and I got you, pal.
No, I'm just trying.
You weren't a part of the conversations. You weren't a part of the meetings as to why Vince wanted to put the title on Hogan. And Hogan was, I'm looking at Hogan's run in it's 1993, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have it here. I don't have the, well, dude, I don't have my book here. I think you've got them there. And I'm not looking at what you have, so I'm sorry. I can't answer what you're saying is the case. I'm sure Dave Meltzer and all the rest of the dirt sheet world will jump all over it. But I'm giving you the exact reasons as to why the switch was made. If he was pulled from the deal, then he was pulled from the deal. But the original idea behind it and why Vince wanted to make the change, it wasn't done the day of. It was done weeks ahead of time. We had the pay-per-view encores all set up. It was so Hulk would be champion on a European tour for his farewell tour. If you don't want to believe that, then don't fucking believe it.
So you're saying he did appear on the European tour, and the internet has now colluded to make sure that no one reported it, and we kept it a secret.
I don't have my book in front of me. I'm giving you my recollection. You asked me why we made the switch with Hogan. I gave you the reason why we made the switch with Hogan and how that all came about. Now, if he didn't go on the tour, if he didn't make that, then I don't recall that because I didn't do research on a goddamn European tour. And if you have wrong information, you may have wrong information. If he didn't make the tour, maybe he didn't make the tour. But the reason why the title was switched to Hogan at WrestleMania IX was because he was going on a European tour for a fucking farewell tour. Fuck you. To go over and be the champion.
So let me ask this. Is this, in your opinion, now that you know he didn't make the tour,
I don't know if he did or not. I know that you're showing information. Well, Conrad, you don't know if he made the tour or not either. You're looking at goddamn information on the internet. Has the internet ever been wrong?
Can you find any evidence that he was there? I can find lots.
If you get my fucking books, I can tell you.
Okay, your books don't say he was there.
I don't believe you. Yeah, look at him. Conrad, again, I didn't do research on the tours that took place after WrestleMania. I did my research on WrestleMania IX. That's what we were talking about. You asked for a reason why the championship was made. If you want to talk about Hogan missing dates after the fact, then we can go back and we can look at that research and talk about that. But where we are right now and what I have, and you asked about WrestleMania IX, why the title switch was made, that's why it was made. That was the rationale that was given. If Hogan was booked on that and then didn't come, then he didn't go. I don't know because I don't have that information in front of me.
No, that's what I'm asking though, is I believe you when you're saying that's the rationale and that's the explanation that was given. I guess my follow-up question I'm trying to drill down on is, do you believe that Vince thought he needed an explanation? Do you think that Vince was somehow romanticized by Hogan and thought this is the magic bullet and was sold by this or on this by Hogan and needed a way to kind of spin it to Bret and everybody else, that this was essentially the farewell tour for Europe with him with the world title? Do you believe that that was the case, or do you believe that it's more likely that Hogan agreed to that and it was the truth, but then pulled the "that doesn't work for me, brother" routine?
What doesn't work for him? Winning the title?
Going to Europe.
But that was the whole reason for Hulk coming back for that summer. The whole situation was Hulk was coming back. We were going to get a European tour out of him, and he was gone after King of the Ring.
But it didn't go. So the question,
again, Conrad, I don't know, and I don't remember whether he went or not. I know that he was booked. I know that was the whole concept between bringing Hulk back during that time frame.
I guess what I'm saying is
we had him for a short period of time. We knew that we had a small window to capitalize on Hulk coming back. We knew that we had an overseas tour.
So in your opinion, it's not that Hulk lied or that Vince misrepresented. It's he went and the internet's wrong.
Okay, you know what? Here we go. July 30th. It was July, so excuse the fuck out of me. Dortmund, Germany. Hogan beat Yokozuna. Offenbach, Germany. Hogan beat Yokozuna. Munich, Germany. Hogan beat Yokozuna. Berlin, Germany. Hogan beat Yokozuna. Edinburgh, Scotland. Hogan beat Yokozuna. London, England. Hogan beat Yokozuna. So it wasn't until July and August.
Was he the world champion then?
Nope. My time frame is off. Excuse the fuck out of me. But that was the goddamn idea.
We've got to make him the champion so he can go to Europe and not be the champion. God damn it, it's simple, pal.
It is.
You have consistently said he needed to go over there as champion. When he went,
that was Vince's rationale.
And he changed his mind about King of the Ring, maybe?
Well, no, he probably changed his ring about fucking ever getting back to SummerSlam and coming back after that because he didn't do SummerSlam that year.
This is fun.
Yeah, but see, you didn't do your rest of the research for the rest of the summer.
No, that's not fair. You have said consistently you wanted him to go there as champion. When he went in August,
which was the reason that we made the switch.
But he wasn't the fucking champion when he went.
Because things change.
I love you so much for that. When fucking Dave Meltzer says that, he's a jack off to you. But when you say it, it makes total sense.
You goddamn right it does.
This lens.
We sit on that wall to protect you, motherfucker, because you need our protection.
This was fun. Well, this wasn't a King of the Ring show, but we do want to go ahead and touch on what Hogan wrote in his book. He said, on April 4th, 93 at WrestleMania IX, I took the belt from Yokozuna for my record 5th championship. I pinned him 1, 2, 3, paving the way for our rematch. But before we got to King of the Ring a month later, Bret Hart got in my face and said, you son of a bitch, Vince McMahon told me you won't drop the belt to me. I said, brother, I'm dropping the belt to Yokozuna. That's the deal I made. And Bret said, that's not what Vince told me. He said you wouldn't drop the belt to me because I'm not in your league and I couldn't lace up your boots. I said, well, how about you and me get in a room with Vince right now? Finally, the three of us, Vince, Bret, and myself, wound up in a room together. Bret said to Vince, didn't you tell me that Hulk Hogan wouldn't drop the belt to me? And Vince said, quote, Bret, that's just what you thought you heard. I had a feeling that Vince wasn't going to be straight up with Bret, and I think Bret felt the same way. But Vince was the boss, so there's nothing Bret could do about it except fume a little. I was fuming a little myself, to tell you the truth. I didn't care if Bret Hart got the belt or not. It just pissed me off that Vince had told me one thing and then told Bret another, because everybody thought it was my decision to not drop the belt to Bret. It made me look like I wasn't a team player. A month later, just as I'd agreed my discussions with Vince McMahon, I dropped the belt back to Yokozuna at King of the Ring in Dayton, Ohio. Then I left the World Wrestling Federation. I wasn't fired, and I didn't quit. It was a mutual agreement that I would no longer wrestle for the company after I lost the championship to Yokozuna. I would just pursue other interests. There wasn't any animosity between me and the company. I just walked out, and that was it. But to tell you the truth, brother, it was a relief to move on. The drama had just gotten out of hand, with people bashing me left and right, calling me selfish for some of the things I had or hadn't done in my career, when it was always the promoter who had asked me to do those things. I had been down a long, hard road, and it was nice to finally take a breather. So, Bruce, we're going to discuss King of the Ring another time, but I wanted to at least include Hogan's testimony here because I know he's been villainized over this for years. Do you remember this sit-down and this confrontation and the three of them getting together in a room?
I remember hearing all about it, and from my recollection, that's pretty accurate. What Hulk wrote there. The idea that, and again, it was me, Vince, and Pat, that we had from the beginning was pretty much that Hogan would beat Yoko for the belt. He would drop the belt at King of the Ring after the European tour back to Yoko, and then we would move on with Bret and Yoko. That Hogan was short term. He was going on to do his Thunder in Paradise and do all of his Hollywood stuff. So there was never any intent to keep him beyond that. And Bret felt that Hulk should drop the title to him and pass the torch.
There's rumor and innuendo out there that you guys even did a photo shoot on a beach with Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan playing tug of war with the belt.
Never heard that one.
You don't remember that?
No, I sure don't.
If anybody has a picture of that, tweet it at the show, at Prichards Show. We would love to share that with our listeners. Do you remember there ever being a conversation about Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan having a match at SummerSlam?
There was always discussion about that. Wouldn't that be great? And Bret, that's what Bret wanted. Bret wanted to face Hulk and wanted Hulk to pass the torch to him.
At SummerSlam.
Either at King of the Ring or SummerSlam, yeah. But Vince didn't see that. Vince felt that was a babyface match and that it wouldn't do anyone any good. If Hulk lost to Bret, it would hurt Hulk and vice versa. Vince was never in favor of that match.
Why do you think Vince didn't like it? Because it was two baby faces and he had learned his lesson against Warrior?
Yes. And the fact that he wanted to push Bret and putting Bret against Hulk, he felt would hurt Bret at that time in a babyface situation.